Nico, when we're taking a look at the impact that he's had in the Premier League, I mean, where do you even start with that?
Revolution of the game. He changed how the Premier League approaches football. Managers have tried to evoke him. Managers have tried to figure out the antidote to play against him. I think the team that closest came to that was Jurgen Klopp's Liverpool. But it only lasted for a couple of seasons. In fact, they took one Premier League title off of him. And Pep has shown that his football was mostly unrivaled in his 10 years. He won the majority of the Premier League seasons in which he managed. Think about that. He won the majority of the Premier League seasons in which he managed. And he accustomed us to greatness. Manchester City was always going to compete. No drop-off. The one year that they actually kind of did drop off, uncharacteristically, was in the 9th year of his tenure. We're talking about a top 2 manager in the history of the Prem.
He redefined what dominance is. It was almost like watching someone rule the Premier League with an iron fist. Season in and season out, it was City's Premier League to rule. And he did it in different ways. You think of this, the City team that he inherited, the tough decisions he made to get rid of players like Yaya Toure. And I think you said something that resonated with me about there's both a genius about him from a tactical standpoint, but there's also a ruthlessness about Pep Guardiola. And that ruthlessness keeps the City machine going again and again and again. When I look at City at their best, and I compare it to this current City team, yes, some of the players that have been there from yesteryears aren't there now. The quality we haven't seen all the time. But the same common denominator is the hunger of Pep Guardiola. He's one of the hungriest managers I've seen probably since Sir Alex Ferguson.
Which is why we thought maybe this wouldn't be his last season. That was our argument yesterday, that we felt like maybe this season, despite the domestic double, wouldn't be enough for him to want to leave at the end of the season.
This era is nothing short of legendary, of what he's had at Manchester City, and it is 10 years, and that is an eternity in modern football. But when you're in the middle of it, particularly when you're not a Manchester City fan, it feels like it's never going to end. And I mean that with the utmost respect and the highest of praise I can put on Pep Guardiola. We talk about the trophies. That is most important. That's what we're all here for. That's what the fans remember. Those are the lasting memories. That is what you were here to deliver. But the performances, for me, is what's going to last longer. The revolution of the English game under Pep Guardiola. And at the highest level of all sports, but obviously football in particular, when you do something successful, other teams try to mirror it. Other teams tried to mirror his tiki-taka football that he brought to England. When people said, I don't know if that's going to work in the Premier League, it's too physical, it's all this. Well, it worked. And then a lot of teams tried to mimic it. And then Pep Guardiola, sometimes I'll play with false nines. Sometimes I'll play with fluidity. Then other teams are mimicking that. You know what now I'm going to do? I'm going to go get Erling Haaland. And sometimes we'll go short, short, long. And this is the sign of a genius. You can do something well and you could copy something well. It's when everybody adapts to you and then you have the answer for everything else because you are the genius. You are the one setting the tone and setting the style.
Because we had Pep in the Premier League, we saw Burnley passing people to death in the Championship and winning it in record style because a Pep disciple was there, right? The adaptability is massive, massive, because it's not like he bore you to death every single season with a million passes and possession. He put a center back in center midfield. He had a four back of all central defenders. He had wingers or right wing backs popping into the midfield, constantly changing, constantly innovating, forcing people to think 2 steps ahead because he was already 3 steps ahead. This is what Pep brings to the table beyond the trophies. I don't think that's an easy thing to do. Season after season, refresh the message, refresh the tactics, always try to be ahead of the curve, because sooner rather than later, someone's going to get your number. That's how football works, because you have a game plan, you see the blueprint, you say, all right, what am I going to do to counteract this? Sometimes the team came up and, all right, was a little bit of a challenge, but it always felt like Pep had the upper hand. It's again, and it's also easier to have an upper hand when you have the funds to be able to get the players that you want to do this.
Yeah.
But there's other teams that have the funds to get the players that they want, and they don't even come close to this. So I put Jurgen Klopp at number 5, especially in the time that he had to coexist. He won 1 Premier League title. The next 4 have won multiple.
It could have been 6. He came up in the Pep Guardiola era. Look at the point totals. It's
sure.
unbelievable. It's unbelievable what those two brought out of each other.
And also, the thing is that there were several managers with 1 Premier League title that I could have chosen. Obviously, Jurgen is the manager that I got to experience the most in my lifetime versus managers in the 90s and early 2000s. But when you talk about influence, the way that Jurgen Klopp influenced the Premier League and the title races that he put on the table against some of the best Premier League teams that we've seen, I want to give him a spot on this list. We move it on forward to number 4, and it's Jose Mourinho, I believe. Yeah, there you go, Jose Mourinho. Jose Mourinho, multiple Premier League winner.
Yeah.
Talk about influence. But I do think there's somebody with as many Premier League titles as him that has had even more influence on the game. Aesthetically, the aura that he gave to his team, and that's Arsene Wenger. So I'm going to put Arsene Wenger at number 3, and then the rest of the list speaks for itself. We speak about Arsene Wenger in a very high light, but number 2 is Pep, and number 1 is Sir Alex Ferguson. I think one of the few, if only, arguments where Fergie goes above Pep is because of the trophies won. There's more longevity there, though.
Yeah, 100%.
And I don't think you get that longevity of Sir Alex Ferguson, and I think that deserves its spot. But this is not to say who's the better manager, right? I think over a span of a career, Fergie goes number 1 on my top 5. But that's not necessarily saying that Fergie's a better manager than Pep, because Pep might be a better manager than Fergie.
Yeah, well, I'm willing to argue that with anyone, whether on this desk or anyone out there in world football. On the totality, when you look at European football and league football, I think Pep Guardiola is 1 up on Sir Alex Ferguson. Wow. That's just my personal opinion. When it comes to the Premier League, I think this list is spot on, Nico. I was really, really intrigued as to why Jose Mourinho wasn't up above Arsene Wenger, but I think what you said about Arsene Wenger, I think people need to remember that as much as we talk about Pep Guardiola changing football in England, Arsene Wenger was the first person who came into the Premier League and changed football. I remember growing up watching that Arsenal team. Arsene Wenger gave us va-va-voom. Before we talked about tiki-taka, va-va-voom. I used to go out and, for better or for worse, I used to try and replicate what I saw from Thierry at practice. Sometimes maybe good, sometimes not so good. But he gave us the Invincibles. He gave us just something different. He changed footballing culture in England. But Pep Guardiola took what Wenger did and just did it at another level. And it's different. The big asterisk you mentioned about the unlimited budget, that does make a big difference.
For sure it does make a big difference. But again, my counter argument to that is that today in the Prem, there are many teams with similar, if not higher net spend than Manchester City, and they don't get the same results. And I can't, by the way, mentioning Wenger. Wenger, to me, had to be 3rd on this list.
Yeah.
Because I couldn't just sit here, and we were discussing consistency, and if there was a constant, it was that Arsenal was going to be competing every single year under Wenger for a countless amount of years, and that deserves its recognition on this list.
And the way that he revolutioned the league before Pep did, and Pep did it better and more successful with the trophies, but Wenger walked. So Pep Guardiola's robots could sprint, because this team, when they get to the spring, they chase you down. And maybe that won't be the case this year. Arsenal won yesterday, and they still have a hand on the trophy right now. But the scariest thing is look in the rearview mirror in April, and you see Manchester City. You look at the form guide, it's like they've won 9 in a row again. They just don't drop points. That's what this team does. And you talked about him as like a competitive animal. The one like down year last year, like you could see the physical ramifications on Pep Guardiola from what not being the absolute unquestioned best did to him. He had scratches on his face. He was joking in the media that I want to harm myself because we're not winning. And that's the crazy, and again, I say crazy in a positive way, the crazy competitive mentality that Pep Guardiola has, on top of all of the technical side and the thinker. Like, he's hard, man.
I think crazy is an apt word. It's mad scientist.
You have to be.
Yeah.
Right?
You have to be.
It's in football, you occasionally get those brilliant minds that are a little bit off, a little bit crazy. You've ever sat? I've had the pleasure of sitting with Bojan Milutinovic, former U.S. men's national team manager.
Shout, yeah.
You sit at a table. He's grabbing the salt shakers. He's grabbing you. He's showing you plays from 30, 40 years ago. And football often gives us some of these characters, and Pep is one of those.
What he's done, is phenomenal. And in the time scale, the rapidity at which he has achieved it is absolutely breathtaking. So you have to say, he didn't just... He's changed the landscape of football, not just in the Premier League, but in Europe, the way the game is played. And he has completely changed the DNA of a football club forever. That is indisputable. So when you look at his body of work, it's quite incredible. And the phenomena that is Pep Guardiola, the energy, the intensity is extraordinary. He is an extraordinary human being. He has his faults, of course, as we all do. But to see the way he works, the way he goes about his work, it is very, very rare. Those other managers in your list, Nico.
Yeah, do you agree with Nico's list?
Yeah, broadly speaking, yes, although I would make some points on it. For instance, the obvious discussion is always Pep and Sir Alex Ferguson. Sir Alex Ferguson is a manager. He's a coach. You could argue Pep was the greater coach on the grass out there, because Fergie always employed different coaches and rotated them regularly as well. And he was a fantastic manager. Pep has managed in a different way, but coached in a completely different way. Yeah. So I would make that separation. Mourinho is just something else.
I think the only I think the top four is the top four, and the fifth one is debatable.
Yeah, I would have potentially found, and it would have felt harsh. I don't have the answer. I would have found a place for Claudio Ranieri to do what he did with Leicester City. Yeah. He's won as many Premier League titles as Jurgen Klopp. Yeah, and which doesn't reflect. I mean, Claudia, the fantastic battles we saw that period between Liverpool and Manchester City. It was incredible. Again, you talk about the trophies that Pep won. To secure 100 points. Nobody's ever done that in the Premier League. 100 points. Look at the totals Liverpool were compiling and not winning the Premier League. Yeah. That speaks as loudly as to Pep's achievements as well. And to rebuild 3 teams as well. To go again. I've had a load of calls in the last 24 hours, and everyone's saying, why? Why now? Is it because of the charges? Is he going now? I genuinely think he's just exhausted. He looks exhausted, and I think he is put in. I mean, he said it himself so many times. To manage is hard. To manage in the Premier League is incredible. To do it for 10 years at that level, that takes a lot out of you.
I have a question. We often refer, when we talk about the Premier League, to the Big Six, of which Manchester City is a part of.
Originally, the Big Six included Tottenham and Everton. That was what was always defined as the Big Six. So it's changed. So the order has changed. Yeah.
Where was City before Pep? Like, not even close to being one of to be the biggest of the six. They are now the biggest of the six.
Nico, within my lifetime, they nearly ended up in. Well, they would nearly end up in the 3rd division.
That's crazy.
And Joe Royle, one of the famous managers and former players, used to say it's a circus club. It's a circus club, and they used to call it City-itis. They get near to winning something, and it all went away. So that's it.
1970 FA Cup that they won, I forget. I remember when Tevez goes to City, right in this overhaul. This is pre-Pep. That was one of their biggest achievements in club history, an FA Cup. City wins an FA Cup only in one season. It's a bad season.
Oh, you're talking chalk and cheese with the old Manchester City. That the amount of times that they are on the cusp of relegation, they were relegated. The old stadium, Main Road, it had great personality, but it wasn't fit for purpose in terms of modern football and viewing football. It's the change in the club and the last decade we've seen. I mean, it started, Mancini and Pellegrini, they both won titles, but this guy took the car and put the pedal to the metal.
Who is Pep Guardiola, the person?
To interview Pep, he can be awkward, he can be patronising, he can be sarcastic, he can be difficult, he can be engaging, he can be humorous, he can be personable, and he can be absolutely fascinating as well. You never ever get the same Pep. It's not like a lot of managers. I walk in, I know what I'm going to get. It can be completely different. Sometimes he literally treats you, he spits answers at you with contempt. And it can be because he thinks you are questioning. One of the funny things with Pep, you say, you know, why did you play John Stones at left back today? And you're asking on behalf of the viewers, and 99.99999% of viewers have never played the game professionally. So you're genuinely interested as to why you played it.
You're questioning
his footballing ability.
His decision. Why, you think I should have played him somewhere else?
But once you have the conversation with him, and he gets to see, I remember that. And Pep was being awkward. So our floor manager had gone across several times. No. Wouldn't do an interview. Spoke to their media. No, Pep wasn't having it. Didn't want to know. And we're about to go off air. You cannot go off air without speaking to Pep on the day they've collected the trophy. So I just went over to him and I said, come on. It's the last day of the season. You've done all your photos. You've spoken to all your family. Come on. And he went, OK. And we just walked. Somebody sent me that. And we just walked over together. We were just having a laugh, and he was sort of almost smiling at the pantomime of it all. And Pep has that in his locker as well. You know, I knew him before he was at Man City because I did a lot of Champions League, and I, you know, as manager of Barcelona, I covered him as well. And you knew then he when you're up close to him, Claudia, he radiates he almost has he smoulders a burning passion of intensity, and he can't stop moving. He's a ball of kinetic energy. But equally, he can also be funny as well. He can be that. He's got all of those things in his locker, and it's interesting to see everybody's reaction to him leaving and to his legacy. And you can't not talk about the 115 charges. And does that, in people's opinion, taint his achievements?
Do you think those charges? You said that you don't think it's because of the charges that he's leaving.
No, I don't think
he's tired.
No,
but we're seeing a lot of people leave the club lately.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, because he's going. Goalkeeping coach, fitness coach. I don't think he's going. I genuinely think he's exhausted. I mean, the amount of times we've seen him in press conference say, "I've spoken to the owners. They've told me," and it was the same with UEFA. You can look it up. It's on. You can Google it. I'm here. I'm in this club. If they've lied to me, I'm out. He believes the owners, so therefore, he said, you know, if they'd been relegated because of a points deduction, he'd have stayed. If they were in the second, League Two, he'd have been there. So, does it taint it? You can't deny that if the charges are proven, the club had an advantage, and they were able to supply Pep with more armoury than other managers, and some of the great players they have could well have been playing for Liverpool or for Arsenal or for Chelsea. However, you've still got to make it happen. You've still got to coach those players. So, for my money, if the charges are true, that's on the club, not on the coach.
Yeah, I agree as well. It'll have an asterisk if those charges end up falling on the guilty side of things for Manchester City. But what he did, it's always in hindsight. I would love to see what we would have said when he takes over and we tell ourselves what Pep Guardiola achieves in these next 10 years. There were high expectations. This wasn't like Barcelona. It wasn't like Bayern Munich, where, in fact, he probably underwhelmed not winning the Champions League.
Yeah,
he walked into a club that was not big by any means. Yeah, sure, they had just starting to win. Maybe he needed to fulfill expectations. He obliterated expectations. By all means. That is extraordinary. Thanks for watching this video from Morning Footy. For all news and insights regarding leagues around the world like EFL, Serie A, and all UEFA competitions, both men's and women's, don't forget to sign up for Paramount+.